when the Son of Man comes, will he find Rickett Road still closed? It looks like they're going to be repaving that in the next couple of weeks, so I'm very happy about that. But when the Son of Man comes, will he find faith on earth? Jesus says this as an illustration of his parable, which Luke tells us is about the necessity to pray always without becoming weary. Multiple times in Luke's gospel, Jesus is encouraging us to persevere and be persistent in our prayer, especially when it comes to seeking the heart of God. And he tells this story of this widow that's approaching this judge who does not have any respect for any human beings and does not revere God. And Jesus says, basically the sense of the parable is if this unjust judge is going to give this widow a just sentence, he says, how much more will God secure the rights of his chosen ones who call out to him day and night? You and I are his chosen ones. We are ones who cry out to God day and night for justice against our adversary. And as a priest, one of the things that I see the most of people crying out to God, and probably one of the most important things we cry out to God for in our prayer, is that the people in our family and our friends who have fallen away from the church might come back to the church. Or people in our lives who don't believe in Jesus, who do not yet know his love, might come to know him. I think Jesus is saying to each of us that we need to persevere in that prayer. We need to continue to knock on the door of God's heart. We need to continue day and night to cry out, because God also wants people to come to know the truth and to be saved. Just a few days ago, there's an important study came out from the Pew Forum. And these are some of the results. Today, 65% of American adults call themselves Christians. Just 10 years ago, that number was 77%. So in 10 years, 12% of the population no longer calls themselves Christian. We see, even breaking this down in terms of the age groups, of those adult Americans born between 1928 and 1945, 85% of them call themselves Christian. Our older generation, 85% of them who are living today call themselves Christian. They practice their faith. They're Christian. Those born between 1946 and 1964, 76 call themselves Christian. It's going down. From 1965 to 1980, only 67% call themselves Christian. And finally, among those born between 1981 and 1996, and I was born in 1982, just 49% of American adults call themselves Christians. And the statistic that I think is most bothersome is that there's this category of the nones, the people who don't profess any religion at all, is at 17% of the population. And that's not counting those who call themselves atheists or agnostic. You add those to the mix, a full 26% of Americans have no religion. 26%. Now, of course, there are many reasons why this is happening. And I'm not going to go into all of them. But as the church, we need to make sure that we don't just simply fall back into this posture of saying, well, it's really because our increasingly secular culture. That's the reason why it's happening. There's been so much change. That's the reason why it's happening. It's a complex problem, but one of the things that's become clear to us in the church is that for a while there, the church had forgot its main mission of making new disciples. I mean, in other words, we had a kind of a comfortable church. We live in a predominantly Christian culture in which predominantly people practice their faith. And so we kind of lost the art of proposing the faith for people who do not yet know the faith and making new disciples. And because of that, we lost our ability to do that. And so as the culture begins to pull away from the faith, the church is being reminded of the very reason why it exists in the first place, and that is to make disciples of Jesus. And this is what the Scriptures teach. This is what the church has been teaching. And this is what we're hearing about over and over and over, to get back to the basics of what it means to be a Christian, to come to know who Jesus is, to become his disciples, and to do what we can to bring other people to become disciples, so that we might know his saving love because he wants to live with us forever. You see, the church is described in theology as a community of missionary disciples. It's a community of us coming together of disciples who are on mission. What unites us as a body is Jesus calling us to go on mission. And if the church is a community of missionary disciples, then each parish is a community in a particular location of disciples together on mission. And what's so beautiful about that is that it enables us to focus on what often has been forgotten in the church, and that is this idea of making new disciples. Now, there's good news. Not all parishes struggle in making new disciples. Not all parishes struggle in bringing back people who have been lost, who've been away from the faith. The parishes who take seriously the call to evangelization and really invest serious time and resources in evangelization are bringing people back to the fold. They're bringing people to the saving love of Jesus. Even the most hardened atheists and agnostics are being won over by churches who take this seriously. And this is why, as our parish, as we grow in our mission of understanding who we are, especially vis-a-vis our surrounding culture, we put on the front of our bulletin, St. Patrick exists to make Spirit-filled missionary disciples of Jesus Christ for the glory of God the Father. It's a reminder to us of what the church exists for in the first place, is to bring people to the saving love of God. And as a parish, we are committed to this evangelization. In January, as a parish, we're going to begin running on a regular basis one of the most effective evangelization tools in the church. In January, we're going to start running Alpha. Now, some of you probably have heard of Alpha. It's a very basic concept. Alpha is a 10-session introductory course to Christianity where people can explore the Christian faith in the context of a meal with others. It's very simple. We come together for a meal, and then there's a presentation on a key aspect of the gospel message, and then there is a discussion at the context of that meal about that message. So why is this so effective? Well, it's effective primarily because Alpha creates a warm, welcoming environment in which people, an environment that is non-threatening, it's not judgmental, an environment where people are known and loved for who they are. They're loved and known unconditionally. And because we love people first, in the context of that love, they begin to open up their hearts to what is it that we believe. And one of the things that I've said before is that people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. This is specifically the case in our postmodern culture. So Alpha is this environment in which we love people and the gospel is preached, and then they get to open their hearts after they have this sense of belonging, and then they have an opportunity to hear the gospel and to respond. And this is one of the most effective ways to evangelize our postmodern culture. And there are many reasons why a parish would want to run Alpha on a regular basis. Number one, it creates a sense of community among the parish, not unlike Christ Renews His Parish. Some of you remember that. There's the sense of coming together and walking with people as they discover Christ themselves. Nothing makes us want to follow Christ more than when we start to see that happening in other people's lives. But we have this sense of community. It's also a way in which we can invest in the lives of others, invest in evangelization. A lot of people will say to me, Father, how can I get involved? Well, Alpha's a way to get involved, to serve as a table leader or a host, or to serve in the kitchen. And it's a way by which we can form up leaders in the parish. And finally, one of the best benefits of Alpha is that it helps us as a parish evangelize. Sometimes when you hear Father Joe and I talk about evangelization, you might be like, are you telling me I need to walk up to someone on the street and tell them about Jesus? My answer is, kind of. But this is a way by which we have a place where they can hear the message. All we need to do is invite people in to hear that message. So it enables us to kind of really take responsibility for the preaching of the gospel. Just recently, I had a parishioner tell me that she had a son that was gone from the church for 15 years, and he was angry. He said, I will not step my foot. I will never step my foot in a Catholic church again. I'm never going to go. Well, he got engaged to someone who had never been a believer. Right? She never grew up with a Christian faith at all. And so his mom invited both of them to come to an Alpha. she said, you know what, that sounds interesting. I'd like to explore the Christian faith. I've never really heard the gospel. And he was not very happy. But they both went to Alpha, and they befriended a couple at the table that was their age, and they began to open their hearts. She got into RCIA, and both of them now are Catholics going to church on a regular basis. They brought them back to this very simple thing called Alpha. The power of Alpha, in many ways, hinges on personal invitation. And so, starting in January, we're going to have Alpha. We're going to have a big Alpha in the newly renovated PLC on Thursday night. We may have some smaller Alphas happening as well for the parish staff and for faith formation families. But this is something we're going to be doing a lot. And I want to encourage you, if you have not gone through this, to consider coming to Alpha. The reason is not just so that you know what you're inviting people to, and this is really important. We can't invite someone to something with as much credibility unless we've experienced it, but also so that each of us can kind of go back to the basics ourselves, to be refreshed in our faith, to have our faith come alive more, so that as we as a parish go out and witness to Jesus in this community, we might do so more effectively. The truth is that each of us may be tempted to stop praying for people who have fallen away from the faith. We might give into growing weary. And if we do, what begins to happen is we begin to rationalize the fact that people are away from the faith. And I've seen this as a priest. People who have stopped praying for those who no longer practice their faith, they tend to say, you know what, it's really not that big of a deal that people aren't practicing their faith. It's really not that big of a deal. People aren't worshiping Jesus or going to Mass on Sunday. Really not, I mean, God's pretty much a good God. Everyone's going to be going to heaven. It's all really not that, it's really, I don't know why we care so much about evangelization. We give into those lies precisely when we give up and grow weary. Jesus does not want us to give up and grow weary because he is the way, the truth, and the life. And he invites each of us to take part in that evangelization effort to call people back to the Father for whom he sent his Son Jesus to die. My brothers and sisters, if we take this seriously and we never give up praying, then when the Son of Man comes, he not only will find faith in our parish, but he will find faith among those who had stopped believing at one point or who had never believed. And he will find more people to celebrate in heaven the gift of God's love. Amen.